Well, yeah, so why don't we start by that? So this is a very interesting of course, this movie is about author Paul Sheldon, who has a known routine when he goes to finish a book. He goes to this small town, stays at this little motel, hotel, whatever it is. He finishes his book. Upon finishing the book, lights a cigarette, has his glass of wine, does not make any
Right.
copies. There you go. Does not send any copies to his agent, to anybody. He has the only copy with him as he travels back. This is his routine. This whole town knows about it. So this, like any other time, he's finished the book. It's all good. But then apparently, where he's at, he doesn't check the incoming weather at all, the forecast. Because I would have thought this whole thing could have been easily diverted if he had just checked the weather beforehand, knew there was a snowstorm coming in, and didn't test those um, what what looks like to me like curvy roads in a snowstorm, like not even like a nice road to drive on, a very bumpy, curvy, mountain-like road. What was Paul Sheldon thinking, man? Just stay there until the blizzard's over. What are you doing, man?
Yeah, it is. This scene is kind of weird for me because you at the very beginning you see snow's already covered a good portion. It's just the roads are clear. If you're in an area that you know because you go there when you write every one of your books, you should know it snows. So you should pay attention to the weather and you won't die.
Should we blame the motel he's staying at? Is it like are the conditions so bad that he's so eager to get the hell out of there that he's like, I'm not staying in this place one more night. I'm risking the weather.
Well,
Because yeah, any sane person, first of all, you'd have a general idea of like if there's a snowstorm coming, you probably would have heard about it somehow. I know this is 1990, so obviously you don't have the weather on your smartphone that you just like the incoming thing comes on. But probably someone in the receptionist at the hotel desk would have been like, "Hey," as he's leaving, like, "Hey, watch out for the storm." Something
well,
like,
here's the thing. They say it's a hotel, but yeah, it's more like a resort because he's staying in a log cabin. He's not like he's not staying in a room attached to a whole building.
in today's world, it feels almost like a bed and breakfast. It's like, yeah, it's like renting a cabin kind of thing. So yeah, not a traditional hotel, just one of those kind of countryside sort of bed and breakfast things where probably but he's probably friends with the receptionist. He's probably friends with at least a small group of people in the town. I just think he would have been aware of the snowstorm. And to me, if he's in that much of a rush, it means either he hates the conditions there, or yeah, he thinks that his car can make it through. Um,
Well, he even says in the
that's
movie he didn't listen to the weather. He didn't know the snowstorm was coming.
Yeah, which I mean, he's not like a teenager. He's a grown man. It feels like that's just something that you would, especially if you saw it snowing while you're leaving, right? It's just something you would think about, like, hey, how far do I have to drive? What kind of roads am I driving through? What's the weather conditions like forecasting? Like, just feels like things you would research for what seems to be an otherwise intelligent man. But this was fail number one, Paul Sheldon. Now, fail number two is the actual crash itself. What? You're not supposed to like slam the brakes like on like icy roads like that, man. What are you doing? Like, of course your damn car flipped over and flew off a damn road. This is
Yeah, it
bad driving, sir.
makes me
Bad
wonder.
driving.
Does he normally come to this area? Maybe he comes to this area mostly during summer when there's probably a bunch of fishermen around. Because the way he acts, it doesn't act like he's someone who's used to snowy weather.
Well, he's not. We can assume for sure that he's someone who lives in the city, probably in warm weather, maybe Los Angeles, something like that, I'm guessing.
Well, if his publisher is in New York, I'm assuming probably
Oh
lives in
yeah.
New York.
Oh, well, New York, then he should be used to that cold climate though, a little bit. But
Yeah.
New York but in New York, you don't necessarily have to have a car in New York. A lot of
Uh,
people like stay in like DC, New York, they just walk and they don't actually drive. So maybe driving in winter conditions is not his thing. Um, but either way, I mean, like I said, even when I was first driving the snow as a teenager, in any winter climate, you kind of have those principles instilled in you, like, hey, don't slam on the brakes, drive slow, especially on like curbs and things like that. He's driving like just very casually, just like normal speed, just like no, like oblivious to the world. Like I don't understand. Your book is done. You should be now present back in the world, man. What are you doing? But what the point I wanted to bring up though also is that the crash is bad. I mean, he could have died there for sure, right?
Well, I mean, he
So
definitely broke both his legs, broke his arm, probably broke a couple of ribs. Actually, I'm surprised
yes,
he survived the initial crash.
well, this is the catch 22 because of course we know what happens in the movie. We know that he gets saved by his number one fan, an obsessive fan who's going to basically terrorize him. But if she hadn't been his number one fan, nobody was going to be there to save him. He probably would have died. So it's a choice of saved by Annie Wilkes or die right there at the scene of the accident. So even though it's like a bad thing in a way that he gets taken in by Annie Wilkes, the alternative was probably just death, right?
Though
Um,
I'm pretty sure with some of the things that happens to him, he probably wished he just died in that car.
I don't know. In the very, very last scene in the movie, he says in a way that the whole Annie Wilkes experience was good for him. So it did something for him where he, I guess, has a higher appreciation of life or something at the end. Like I don't know exactly why it was good for him, but um, I don't know. But okay, either way, let's talk about horror movie strength, super strength, because I know you have a one pet peeve about this movie in particular, and it's gonna be funny coming from you, the champion of Scream 5, which has, somebody overpowering Dewey on the ground or just physically being able to match up. But
Well,
okay, let's go
I'm
with
pretty
the
sure I've had gripes with that. I just think I just like the movie. But yes, the this movie has Annie Wilkes. Now, anyone who's walked in snow, especially knee deep snow, knows that can be a chore. You will be out of breath. It uses a good amount of strength.
Mhm.
It's a pain in the ass. Is what I'm trying to say. So this woman lifts this man up like it's no problems and walks him all the way to her house, which I would assume with where we see the car in addition to the house, probably 2 miles, maybe three. And that's being generous.
Wait, she has her car there though, right?
I don't think the car we see, I don't know if that can actually drive through the amount of snow we're seeing her walk through.
I don't think okay, yeah, you're taking it extreme. I don't think she's literally him on his back walking him 2 miles back to her house. She definitely has her car on the road up there. She's just taking him back with the car because she says later on that sometimes she would sit near his hotel in the car basically and just look up and I guess imagine what he's doing or something. So some stalker stuff. But yeah, I don't think she's actually like walking him back. She was following him in the car, I assume.
Either
Uh,
way,
so
she still walked him up a steep hill that even the sheriff himself, granted, the sheriff is an older man at this point, but the sheriff himself had issues crawling up.
well, Kathy Bates is I buy her as a strong person. But have you heard of sort of like mother type strength? Like if a mother has to save their child, they can do something ridiculous like lift a car because of the amount of adrenaline surging through you and stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah, but why would
I
adrenaline be
well
surging through?
well, wait a minute now. That's it makes perfect sense. She's that obsessed with Paul Sheldon, his number one fan. The opportunity to save her favorite author, that's gotta be I can save him and take him back to my house and terrorize him and make him write a new book? If all that's going through her head when she's lifting him up, he's gonna just hop on her back like a light as a feather, and because she's thinking about how good for her this is that she got her number one her main person that she's obsessed with. So I could see that mother strength and adrenaline coming in there. Um, so that's no, I'm gonna put that on the table. It still all makes way more sense again than 5 foot, 95 pound Scream 5 killer doing anything she does in Scream 5, or especially Scream 6. What's her face throwing that damn bodyguard
Well,
across the room. So
remember, I'm still in the camp of Ghostface as a damn hitman.
oh, well, that's your way of defending Scream 5, but
And
it
Scream
started
6, technically.
well, yeah, but I know you're higher on Scream 5, but
That's fair.
it started a trend where the writers came out just like they're like, literally like, "Yeah, we know. We're just doing it now to mess people because they're complaining about that." Like, that doesn't make it right, all right?
It
Um,
just makes it to where we don't give a shit about y'all now.
so unfortunately for Paul Sheldon, saved by Annie Wilkes of all people, I do think it's a better better than the alternative death. So he wakes up in her house. He comes to at first, everything seems normal. You have somebody, well, he's still groggy, of course. He's coming through, but it's all blurry and stuff as like, I guess a certain amount of days go by. He's hearing her say things sometimes, especially I'm your number one fan. But she used to be a nurse, so she does a pretty good job of nursing him back to respectability over the first couple of days. She does some work on his legs, probably gives him a lot of painkillers, drugs, things. Um, all seems well at the beginning. It seems like, hey, this is good. Someone took me in. She has a perfect explanation. He's like, why didn't you take me to the hospital? She says, the roads were too much for I couldn't risk it. The phone lines are down, so nobody can send an ambulance. It all sounds good in these first 10 minutes. I mean, he has no reason to really be suspicious at this point. Although the first hint for me was her saying that, her admitting that her finding him was not a coincidence. Her saying like, "It's no secret you're in town. Sometimes I would just like drive by there, just hang out outside your thing." That starts to be like red flag territory of like, "Uh-oh." But oh well, either way. I I thought, and before she said that at the beginning of the movie, I actually was theorizing like, "Hey, did she find him randomly or was she had been following him?" I almost would have liked it better if the movie didn't spell that out. 'Cause then at least it makes you guess, like, was she just stalking him the entire time, or did she randomly that'd have been, I think, better to leave untold for the audience just to pick up on that themselves, but
No, however, he's still not exactly too suspicious. He was just thinking, "Oh, this is a very overzealous fan," because in his mind, it's like, "Well, if this fan really wanted to do me harm, why is she nursing me back to health?"
well, and a fan wouldn't wanna do you harm per se. A fan wouldn't wanna be like, "I'm your fan, so I wanna kill you." Um, but Annie's ultimate plan you'll notice one thing when she picks him up from the accident, before we know anything about Annie, you do see she takes special care to pick up the manuscript.
Mhm.
Like, she coulda left that in the car. She didn't even know what that was. But she picked him up, she put the manuscript in her jacket, and then she took off. So she immediately
Well
was like, "Ooh, that's a new book."
well, just like John Leguizamo in Violent Night, Annie Wilkes knows everything about our character, about Paul Sheldon.
She's seen every interview, she's read every article, she knows everything about this man, which is gonna make things very difficult for him because sometimes he tries to lie, and she can just call him out his lies, like, "No, I know your entire history, that's not true. You don't make copies of your book, sir." Um, the first hint beyond that, I think, is just her reading his new book and just, like, having a big problem with the language. So,
Well, yeah,
um
because he tells her, "Look, I grew up there. That's how people talk," and she's just like, "No, no, no." Like, lady, did you also grow up there?
I thought his answer was perfectly reasonable. He's like, "I know those people. That's how they talk." She's like, "Oh, blah, 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 blah. They don't talk like that, you cockadoodie." Like, it's, her idea of language is just like cockadoodie pretty much, which I guess is a good substitute for cuss words maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, but at the same time, you also got what was the next thing that kind of before? Because I think there was one other mix up. Oh, it was the fact that she came to him every single chapter and just kept saying, "Oh, it's perfect, it's perfect." It's like I don't want to hear that it's perfect. To be honest with you, it's most likely his rough draft hasn't actually been edited yet.
Yeah.
His his whole thing would be I want actual criticism to know what to make use of it, but it seems like she's just being overly nice, even though he's already seen her lose her damn mind once.
Now, I was confused at first. So the new book he wrote was not a misery book.
Yeah, it
It was
was.
something. Okay, so but did she okay, so at the beginning, she's reading the same book the entire time.
Yes.
'Cause I was under the impression that she went and bought a copy of his new book. Like, I thought under the impression that he had a new book that had just came out, and he'd also written this new manuscript. But the new manuscript is a misery book, we're saying. So
Yes,
that's
it
the one
is.
she's read.
Now it is. He says it's untitled, but it is a misery book, and that's when she starts losing her mind because at the end of the book, Misery dies in childbirth.
Okay, okay. So that is the real,
That's her
Well,
real set
it's
off.
weird. Her favorite book is called Misery's Child, right?
Yes.
That's her favorite book. So, because they compare that to the Sixtine Chapel, which is funny. Okay, so all right, yeah, the biggest sort of where shit gets real, where it accelerates from something to 100, is the scene where basically it's middle of the night. We can assume Annie's been reading throughout the night. She finds out that Misery's been killed off, and boy, is she not happy.
Oh, she comes
This is
in just
oh,
dead faced. And first she's talking slow, like, "You're a liar." You're telling the author that no, that is not the book.
this is the first hint of amazing acting too. I just love like she's like, "What happened to Misery?" He's like, "I didn't kill her. She just slipped away." She said, "Slipped away?" Like, like she's like really like, yeah, she's like holding him accountable, which he is the author, so he he has to take ownership. He's like, "Nobody killed her." It's like, "Well, buddy, you killed her. I mean, it was your
You
decision."
wrote
So,
it.
um, this is where all goes to shit because now then she's straight up like, "I didn't call your agent. I didn't call your daughter. Nobody knows your hair, and if I die, you die." Now it's like, ooh, we're like 15 minutes in, but this just escalated into like pure, ooh, he's in trouble now. And the first thing she wants him to do is burn his damn book, burn that
Yeah,
manuscript.
but remember, he's an author. He's a professional author. He's written like what 10 books. This is his 10th or ninth book. So if he's an author, he should know to always have copies. To always send those copies to his. He should have left a copy with the hotel guy so he can send it to his
They,
publisher in New
they
York.
probably had a fax machine or something that you could have faxed it. Something.
I
Now
mean,
I
I
know,
don't know if you
obviously,
want to fax
we're
that many papers, but
now to be fair, we're using with our 2025 glass goggles. I mean, when I write a book, it's saved on my computer. I can email it in 10 seconds. I'm making sure copies are out there pretty much everywhere. I'm sending to different email addresses. I'm making sure there's like 20,000 virtual copies pretty much. 1990, you're right. It's only a physical copy. There's no computer to save it to, no disk to save it to. But yeah, you definitely put out in the mail something, mail a copy out, but you don't just have the one copy. And from the writer standpoint, watching your own manuscript burn, I can only imagine that at that exact moment, he not only thought to himself, "I have to get out of here," but also, "I'm going to kill her." This is the first time where she becomes an enemy to him because, I mean, minimum probably at least no, I'm guessing probably at least a year he worked on that. A year of working on something with no backup copy, watching it burn. He was like, "I'm gonna escape. I'm gonna kill her first and then escape." So, it only escalates and gets worse, more reasons for him to wanna kill her, but this is step number 1.
well, you know what he should have did when she handed him the match. He should have thrown it at her. Let her
I
clothes
mean,
catch fire.
would she be that flammable that the match just instantly lights her on fire and she explodes? Like, I think
Take the lighter fluid and pour it all over her.
what happens is the match just, like, hits her in the clothing, nothing happens, and then she comes back with a sledgehammer and bashes his arms in or something. So,
Well, she can't do
um,
that because remember, her whole plan after reading that manuscript is now you're going to write a whole book dedicated to me the way I expect it to be.
Misery has to return, Misery has to come back to life. Um, and again, this
She
is a nightmare because, like, to be forced to write something that you don't wanna write, to make we'll never know if that manuscript he wrote was good, like a good book, but if he could write a good book knowing that he doesn't actually wanna write the story, credit to him as a writer, but I'm sure the book but it was good because she reads it all throughout and she's, like, captivated. She's like, "Oh my god, Paul, this is the most amazing thing. Misery is back." Like, she does love it, but I think he's consciously just writing what she wants to hear, right? His only goal is to write something that she's gonna like, but he probably hates what he's writing, but he's like, let this stupid woman at least.
Well, heck, he
Um,
knows. You know, he didn't like what he was writing because he ends up burning it himself right after.
I wonder if he even felt. I wonder if he had to do it because it's part of his plan to survive. But I wonder if even that was kind of. I bet you even that was a little bit painful for him. Even even if he didn't like the book, I'm sure he was like, "This is still a book, and this is a misery book. That's probably about $10 million in value that he just lit on
Well, if
fire. It
you
was the only way. It was the only way he needed a distraction big enough. So I get it, but
well, you
painful.
remember his little flashback. The reason he was killing off Misery is so he didn't have to write no more Misery books because he wanted to be. He said he wanted to be taken seriously, which I think is a weird saying for someone who is being taken seriously. But I think it's just he wanted to divert into something else at that point, a new series, maybe a new genre take, something.
If you've been writing one thing creatively, probably it's like kind of a trap. It's like, yeah, if you've written like 9 misery stories, you probably want to like play with new characters and new ideas. And then what happens is with him, probably the misery books kept making more and more money. So his publisher's probably like, all right, when's the next misery book? So he's probably like, by book 4, he's like, all right, I'm gonna move on to something else. Like, nope, we need 5 more misery books. So it probably kept. It's kind of like I'm guessing the person who did Twilight probably felt that way. I think for
Yes, he
sure
did.
that Jake. But I think she tried to move on afterwards. But how many Twilight books was there? Like
There
6,
was a total
7?
of 4, and then she did write one that was an Edward's point of view. But the problem with that one was it got leaked, so she actually exonated that. And then she tried writing the host, and after that, I haven't heard anything else from her. She may have written more, but I'm not sure. Also, fuck the
Well, that
Twilight books.
well, that's the thing. It's like creatively, you don't want to keep writing those sequels, but it's like they're making money. Harry Potter was what, like 7 books? Um,
Seven,
so
8 if you want to count the Cursed Child, but that's written as more of a script for a Broadway play.
hmm. Yeah, so you gotta think you want to create a new universe, and it's like if you're if he's like 9 misery books, and let's say by misery book number 6, the last 3 have just been like, there's no storyteller. I'm making up the story. It's like a TV show where they keep adding on seasons, and you're like, you didn't plan to like have this story go on forever, go on for 15 seasons, but now it's gone to 15 seasons, and you're like, the
Gee, I
last 10
wonder
seasons
what
have
show you're talking about.
the last 10 seasons have been trash, but you're like, they're making money, the cast is making money, so they keep pumping out the seasons, but you're like, man, I want to move on to something else, but you're the
Well, first of
publisher
all,
that's
the
Wait,
last 10 were not
I didn't name
trash.
any TV show. You're projecting. I didn't name any show
The
here.
last 10 were not trash. The 6 I will give you was annoying as shit. 7 was trash. 8, 9, and 10 were fine. 11 was good. 12 was good, and I actually haven't watched anything past 12.
You haven't even now. For those who don't know, Nick thinks I'm talking about his favorite TV show of all time, which
You
is called
are.
it's a very small, unknown show called Supernatural. Um, and, in the defense
Any,
of the show, in the defense of your show, you just admitted that you haven't even finished the show. You just proved my point. All right.
I do
I
own
mean,
all
come
the
on.
seasons, though.
Do you project that you'll ever actually finish the last 3 seasons?
Yes.
Mhm.
Especially when
Okay.
season 16 starts up again, if they have.
Oh my goodness.
Because there's this.
Um,
I hope they don't, to be honest with you. I will say that because, admittedly, the show was supposed to end at season 5. The only reason they kept going is because I think the producers kept bringing them back. The audience kept wanting more.
this is the point I'm making. This is exactly what's happened with Paul Sheldon in Misery. He's probably been over it since like book 5, but then the publisher's like, "Hey, keep doing this." So he wants to move on now. In terms of like being taken serious, I mean, yeah, I don't know what that's about. Does he want to write like some super dramatic like I don't know.
He
I'm
wants to
sure. I
write
mean,
a big mystery thriller. Let's face it, mystery thrillers
that's what the
all
misery
involve
books
the
are, though.
horror.
I think so.
No, misery or like romance thrillers. Not really mystery thrillers. You know what's going. I'm assuming you know what's going on. You're following this one character, but you got
Well,
to
we have
add
to
the
be
thriller
honest.
aspect of you making 9 damn books.
Well, yeah, I would say neither of us have read a Misery book, so we actually don't know. But
Well, considering fact they're fictional books, I don't think we're ever going to read them.
kind of curious. If they were real books, though, just knowing what I know, I don't. I want to at least read the first book and be like, "What the hell? What made Annie Wilkes so obsessed with this damn series?"
Well, if that's the case, I will say read Stephen King's Misery because apparently it actually goes into depth what the books are and what they're about. That's one of the differences between the movie and the book. Is the book goes more into the Misery novels, whereas the movie, because of the runtime, doesn't have the ability to do it. So they just talk about just the character.
I like Stephen King a lot. The books I've read of Stephen King are always fantastic. Most of his movie adaptations are pretty good. Like, there's some that don't work. Like, did you ever watch the Mist?
Don't remind me of that bullshit.
Everybody hyped up the ending so much, and I watched, and I was like, "This ending makes I don't like it." But there's
Well,
a
you're not.
lot of
No one's
great.
supposed to like it. It's a very dark and bleak ending. But the reason I
That's what
didn't
make
like
it.
it,
That's what makes people like it, though, is that they hype up that it's like such an unexpected ending. But
be honest, I saw it coming from a mile away. The minute they drove away, I'm like, they get to the house, see the way it is, and I'm like, oh, they're all gonna die. And then the dad gets out of the car, getting ready for the aliens to rip him apart, and nothing. I'm like, I hate you
I
all.
didn't. I wasn't expecting that exact ending. It was pretty dark, but it didn't do anything for me.
However, I did
Um,
find out the book ending to that is they just drive away after getting out of the convenience store. They just drive away, and that's where the book ends.
but Stephen King actually came out and said he liked the movie's ending because he didn't feel like he did a good job with the ending because it's kind of a left open to your imagination, whereas the movie gives you more conclusive ending.
That's a
Now,
lot of his books.
very true. Stephen King. So the thing I would say with him is like he famously sometimes is unhappy with his adaptations, like The Shining, for example. He didn't like that, but sometimes he's really high on it. But he's pretty protective of it. So what happened with Misery was that he actually didn't want to sell the rights. He didn't want this to be a movie because he thought they would mess it up. The director is Rob Reiner. He had done a Stephen King movie back in the mid '80s called Stand by Me, which is one of the few Stephen King things where it's like not there's no horror there. It's just like a coming of age, kind of teen movie, right? But Stephen King loved it. So when he sold the rights to Misery, it was with the obligation that Rob Reiner be involved as either a producer or director. So Rob Reiner came on as a director. He'd already done Stand by Me, so this is his second Stephen King adaptation that he's directed. So that they needed him to do that. And Rob Reiner also he had a great run though. He had this. He did A Few Good Men with Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson. It's a great courtroom drama. When Harry Met Sally is a good romantic comedy. Princess Bride. He has a lot of movies that are all different genres, but they're all really good. So shout outs to Rob Reiner. He hasn't done much since like 1996, but he had a great like 7, 8 year run from like the mid 80s to the mid 90s. Um, and then William Goldman also who did the script for Princess Bride. Even though like it's a Stephen King book, they still have a script writer actually turn it into a movie script. So the script is still nothing to do with Stephen King. It's this dude William Goldman. Um, we'll talk about some of the. I know you researched some of the difference between the book and the movie, so we'll talk about that later on. But um, they try to get every actor in Hollywood basically turn this movie down. I guess the common reason cited is that no actor wanted to be do a movie where they're like in bed the entire movie. To
I
me,
mean,
that seems like a fun, easy paycheck, but but they,
well,
I
at that point, you
don't know.
then have to be confident in your facial skills to be able to, and your body language to be able to at least still portray fear, but some weird form of confidence that James Caan actually had throughout this movie.
When I saw the list of actors they offered it to, and like none of them really intrigued me. Like where I would like, oh, I'd rather see that James Caan. The only one that I thought interesting was they wanted Jack Nicholson because he had done The Shining, and I was like, I mean, Jack does have some facial expressions. So I'd have been like, that'd have been fun to see Jack Nicholson in that role. But the problem is Jack Nicholson is like, if you've already seen The Shining, then seeing him here, it's like, okay.
No,
You already
they
you have psycho Kathy Bates, but then you're also gonna be like, Jack Nicholson's kind of psychotic too. So it's like I
so
don't need
I
that
got
in my
the
head.
so they went to Jack Nicholson not for Paul Sheldon, but for Annie Wilkes.
He's gonna put on a wig and just do your
It
shining
would be like Mrs. Doubtfire.
Where's Annie? uh, um, but James Caan, who was like not at the top of their list, was the one who accepted it. And I gotta say, man, they a lot of this movie. I mean, of course, we know. I mean, Anthony Hopkins, who's a very respected actor, he went as far as to say that Kathy Bates here is like the greatest performance ever on film. Like he went really strong with it. She won an Oscar for her performance, which in like horror movies, they usually don't get respected like big award shows. So that she got the best performance, like not of like horror movies, of like of any actress the entire year. So it's a
Makes sense.
highly it's a Hannibal Lecter style iconic performance. But I gotta say, man, watching the movie, I think James Caan is equally as impressive because laying in bed, think about what he's doing in the movie. He's playing a character, but the character is also playing a character because he's the character of Paul Sheldon, but everything he says to Annie almost has to be kind of a lie too, because he has to like the whole time try to stay on good terms with her, make her think that he's doing what she wants. So it's like there's a lot of layers to like what he's doing. He's playing Paul Sheldon. Paul Sheldon's playing somebody who's trying to trick Annie. It's just a lot there with his facial expressions that I was impressed with on this watch, for sure. So props to Mr. James Caan. Um, all right, we went way into the background in the middle of the podcast, but let me bring it back to the movie now. Okay. Well, I guess one thing to ask is because I'm sure as you watch this movie, this is a very user-friendly movie because everybody watching at some point in the movie, you do get the idea in your head of like, what would you do in that situation? Is there something you would do differently? Is there some escape plan that Paul Sheldon's not thinking about, given his physical limitations? And remember that he can't just get up and walk out of bed. He's pretty
Mm.
much screwed, and he also has to. He can only move around when Annie's away at the store or doing something else. So he's very limited in what he can do. But did anything catch your eye in terms of like some escape plan or something he could have done that he didn't do?
So I will say, if this was me in the situation, I'd be dead because knowing me, I would have trash talked Annie the whole damn time. So I would have that
Oh,
sledgehammer not to my feet, but to my face.
she would have said, "This is not even worth it." Like
Right.
he's been but that's what I'm saying. Like he realizes immediately that step one is always be friendly to Annie. Don't be combative. Don't talk back. Don't question things. Whatever Annie says, smile and say what she wants to hear.
So,
That's the only way he can survive in this movie is to take that mindset.
so I will say, the movie does do actually a good job at making it to where it ties in all those little things that you can think of. It's like, okay, try the door. Door's locked. Okay, well, now don't take the pills. You know, he does that. He doesn't take the pills. He puts them in a little thing, tries to drug
That was
her.
that was brilliant. I at first when he did it, I was like, oh, okay, that's probably gonna lead to something because I thought he was just avoiding taking the pills, but he's avoiding taking the pills, but he's also thinking like eventually I'm gonna poison her. It's actually really smart.
Yeah, so I will say the movie does a pretty good job at setting it up to where the audience doesn't have to think too much of what would I do in this situation because James Caan is doing a lot of things most people would be thinking about. It's like stop taking the pills. You know, they're painkillers, and you make her overdose on them. You no longer have to worry about her. The other thing he's doing is not just being friendly, but I feel like he's also slowly putting her into Misery's spot in a sense of being
Hmm.
the love interest because even though he's
Mm.
not overly loving to her, he still does things that could be seen as flirty, which gets her insides all tingly. Um, so that's another thing. Like telling her like, well, we need to do this right. Go get some candles.
Mhm.
Things that make her happy kind of throws her into the form of a romantic interest, like a romance novel.
The main thing is he needs to buy himself time. So
Yes.
whatever he doesn't know what Annie's planning to do with him. So he has to pretty much the more time he has, the more time he has to heal. So he has to like basically buy time, make sure that Annie doesn't get any sudden idea to like just end things or whatever. But so by being as nice as possible, and then also the best thing for him ends up being the idea that she wants him to write a book. Because he can at least now be like, okay, especially if I'm writing a book she likes, I'm safe until I finish the book. She's not gonna have me write the first half of the book. She's gonna be so into it. She's not gonna then just like kill me. She's gonna wait till I finish the book. So she's giving him leverage by letting him write her a book because that's power now, and he's gonna use that, of course, at the end. Um, yeah, the movie does a good job of cutting off everything. Basically, he gets to a phone, but there's no phone.
There's no
Like,
insights.
yeah. Um, Annie being, I guess, let's call her OCD because she's able to notice just one little thing being like turned around on her desk.
Mhm.
Lets her know that he's been out the room. Um,
But she most likely knew from the very first time that happened. Because I think she even said, I was wondering how you were doing it. And then
when
most
she
likely what finally got her to confront him, though, is noticing, oh, there's a knife missing. So if I don't stop this, he's going to kill me.
when she came back from the store and he was like all sweating, he's like, "You know what you did? I need my pills." I immediately thought like, "There's no way she's buying this. She's not buying that he's like starving for his pills, and that made him that sweaty." I'm sure she was immediately suspicious there, and then she probably went to look in the room about like all her stuff, the penguins, all that stuff like that, to see like, okay, is anything seem amiss here? Um, I think most people wouldn't even be as bold as he was. I think most people wouldn't even like do the thing of like she goes to the store and then he's like searching the house. I think most people would actually like just stay in bed and just accept their fate pretty much. Like, to be honest, I don't think most people probably just like be as nice as possible, hope that she gets the flu and dies on her own, like something. Um,
No, I will say the whole thing with him sweating, I feel like that is actually definitely from the book because the other difference about this movie from the book is in the book, the pill she's giving him is highly addictive painkillers.
mm,
In which case, in the book, it is stated that he's there for months, so he's gets fully healed to a most part, but he's addicted to the painkillers because she
mm,
fed him so much. So that is a neat little touch to go back to the book of him sweating, so he's able to play off that hey, I need more pills as if he's
yeah.
addicted. But no, it would be nicer in the movie if it would shown that a little more, like slowly builds up to the point where he realizes he's getting addicted. But by the third or fourth time we see him take pills, that's when he starts stashing them. So we never
Mm.
see that particular change in characterization.
Yeah, it felt like they kind of they left that part out a little bit here in the movie in terms of like how much was he drugged? Was he getting addicted to the drugs? Yeah, I guess in the book it's like the idea is that he used to be an addict and like she's gonna like basically bring the addict back out of him by getting him cooked again on all the pills and stuff. Um all right, let's talk about Annie's background for a moment.
This lady is eviler than Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees put together.
I mean, most killers have a rule about not killing babies.
Nope,
I
she's
mean,
so. I will say when you're first going through her her memory lane, she's showing good. Her husband. I think it said he fell off a bridge. Most likely, Annie pushed him. Uh, Another one is stating, she was Annie's top of her class. Well, the original person who's top of her class died mysteriously.
mm,
Same thing with whatever one of the hospitals she worked at. She was, I think, the head nurse practitioner. Well, the original woman who was supposed to be nurse practitioner died before that. So Annie's getting rid of people who are in her way of making herself a good life.
right.
And then we get to the babies. And I'm like, what did the babies ever do to you?
Holy cow. I mean, they gave her I guess we have to credit Stephen King, but gave her the darkest background. Yeah, it'd be one thing if she's like, if he, it would be actually enough just to be like, okay, she had killed her husband, and then some of the nurses that were competing with her. That'd have been enough to be like, "Okay, this is a horrible human being. She deserves to die." But they had to add in the baby stuff too. You're just like, "My god." Like, she is, like, again, more evil than Michael Myers even or Jason, like, sweet Jesus. Like, he's doing the world a service if he kills her. Like, man.
Yeah, because
Um,
I'm still trying to figure out what, because there, even though it was, obviously I don't condone it, but there is still a reasoning behind all the adults she killed. When we get to the babies, what is she just jealous that she never had a kid or something? Is that what we're supposed to go off of? Maybe she's, again, I never read the books. That may be one of the differences, but is she just infertile and couldn't have kids, and so anytime she sees a child, she's jealous?
she has a very high body count, unfortunately.
All babies.
Let's yeah, let's talk about so she lives in this town. So the town is basically they're aware of who she is.
Yeah, because they even mentioned when they pass by the house, like, oh, that's the Wilkes house.
Yeah. So they know her background. So let's take a few moments to talk about the whole sheriff subplot. Um, because in the first half of the movie, we're sometimes cutting to the local sheriff and his wife as the sheriff is called by Paul Sheldon's agent, basically saying, "Hey, he's missing. We think something's wrong. He hasn't contacted us. He always contacts us when he finishes a book." So that puts the sheriff on alert to be like, there was a snowstorm last week. Um, so the sheriff is going to do, in the first half, I would say, pretty decent investigation. Um, they do find Paul Sheldon's car. What's funny is they find his car and they assume that he's dead.
Well, I mean, by then they can't really determine someone picked them out of the car because there's no footprints anymore. They so they're
But
assuming he survived the car accident,
hmm.
walked off into the wilderness, and most likely froze to death or got eaten by a pack of animals.
Yeah, but the sheriff, to me, it's like it's not that hard to figure out. The sheriff actually just looks at the car door and says, "Well, somebody clearly pried this door open. Like this is like very easy. There was another person involved here. Like you can
I
look at the car door."
mean,
So it's
most
like,
people. I mean, 'cause
how would he have broken the door from the outside if he's locked in the car? So it,
well, I mean, to be honest, at first, before he even looked at that part of the car, he thought the same thing. Oh, well, he just walked into the woods and died. It wasn't until after they got the search party, they went and double checked the car because the car was also a little less buried. When he first found the car, it was still so buried under snow you couldn't see the door. So then he sees the door and goes, "Oh, he
yeah,
may be
but
alive."
my point is like it seems like the authorities like they closed the investigation and was like, oh, well, that's what happened. He's just like, Um, you guys didn't look at the door? Like, this should be an open investigation. He clearly was, like, taken by somebody. It's just like the sheriff just like it's not like he has to like be an amazing detective. He's just like, uh, the
Be
the
observant.
door, the door, the crime scene. Meanwhile, the guys in the background are like, well, we closed the investigation. He crawled in snow. His body's surely out here. It's like, what kind of terrible investigation was this? Um, but he does put together the clues eventually. Again, knowing Annie Wilkes, he's able to match up something she said at her trial with something from the Misery books. It does take him a while to get there because it's like
Well,
if you
first he had
know,
to read the misery books.
yeah, that might have been a waste of time. But I guess he did get the quote from there, so I get it. But the main thing was just like finding out that hey, she buys all the Misery books from the bookstore. That's the big takeaway. Okay, the biggest fan. She lives in a house outside of town. It seems like, and he's you know that you're thinking someone took him put the pieces together. But ultimately, unfortunately, he served the role, which I hate to bring it up, but I've seen it now in like 3 or 4 movies, and it just always annoys me. Tell me you didn't think about the damn dude from The Stepfather, uh, or, what's
Who
another
try to
movie
help,
that's this thing?
pretty much the
Where
helping
where you
person, but
you where you have the subplot going on where you're like, "Oh, yeah, this dude's gonna come in and help because, like, we keep cutting to him and him putting the clues together." And they did the same exact thing where it's like, "Oh, yeah, but" it's the fake thing where he's just there to give you a little bit of hope, but really we have to take him away to make it again back to the main characters has to defeat this himself. I didn't think the sheriff being that old, and I'm gonna say wise, not old, seemed like a very wise person. I don't see him traveling to her house in the way he did without first notifying other people, notifying his wife, first of all. This the whole thing with him works better if there's no wife because then you really can just hide his murder basically.
Yeah,
I'm
but
almost positive I'm almost positive he told his wife, "I'm heading there right now." Like the wife is probably within like 2 hours like, "Hey, let's send someone to Annie Wilkes' house because my husband didn't come back from Annie Wilkes' house." But I guess Annie thinks this too because Annie's like, "They'll send more people soon." But I just think that he really underrated the idea that she could be dangerous. Like I don't know. The one part he messed up on was going to the house by himself and then like turning his back to her and just like underestimating like how psychotic she might be.
well, to be fair, uh, when he first heard the crashes, because he just went through the whole house and James Caan is hidden in a secret basement, that he assumed she was the one who actually fell. So he goes through there when he finds the secret door. He didn't see her the whole time, so she snuck up behind him. He didn't turn his back to her.
But I thought when he was leaving, right? I thought he was playing a joke on her basically, or I thought he really was even more suspicious of her now. But what he was doing was let me get the hell out of here and go back and get backup. I thought that was the ploy he was playing. Was he really just at the end like, "Oh yeah, I investigated, everything's okay. Annie Wilkes seems like a nice woman. I'm out of here." I thought he was more like, there's something going on here, but I can't figure it out right now. I'm gonna go and figure this out." But the way he came back in the house is more like in the mode of like, "Oh my god, sweet poor Annie Wilkes is in trouble. Are you okay, Annie?" Like, was he that stupid at the end? I'm like, I don't know, like what was
I
he thinking?
wouldn't say stupid. I'd just say if he was, to our knowledge, he's only sheriff of this one small
Yeah.
town which most likely nothing has ever happened in. So he's gotten so complacent, so trusting of other people that he just let it all get into his head. And then when he heard the one thing, he automatically snapped to, "Oh, someone's in trouble. Let me go try and help."
Her behavior when she invites him in is very weird. He should have picked up on like, okay, he comes there, he's like, "Oh, you're Paul Sheldon's number one fan." She's like, "Oh, do you want to come in?" He's like, "Yeah." And he says, "Do you mind if I search around a bit?" Her reaction is to be like, "Oh yeah, go in." She's like, "Oh yeah, go ahead, no problem." She keeps talking about other stuff. I'm like, anybody who's innocent would have been like, "What do you mean search around? Are you thinking that I took him?" Like, he should have picked up on like she's acting weird.
See, the only reason I think I know for a fact she had no problems letting him look around is because until Paul made the noises in the basement, the sheriff wasn't going to find it because the door that hides the basement is the exact same as the rest of the wall. It would have
Oh
taken a
yeah.
miracle for that sheriff to actually know there was a door there. So Annie had nothing to worry about. Why should she care?
Well, because
Telling him no is actually going to rouse suspicion even more than just saying, "Yeah, come on in."
well, I think if you're innocent, you would be more like, "What are you accusing me of?" If you're actually innocent. If you're not innocent, then I feel like you'd be, like, putting on a fake thing of like, "Oh, yeah, go search the house. Do you want some bagels? Let me make you some coffee." To me, it's like he should have picked up on, like, a normal person would have been like, "What do you mean search the house? Like, what do you think I did?" Like, she's just, like, very acting weird. I feel like he should have picked up on that. But either way, he comes back in the house. Um, I guess Paul Sheldon had no choice but to do the thing of like, "Hey, I'm down here." But he knows that Misery I'm calling her Misery. He knows that Annie he knows Annie has a gun.
He didn't know
So,
she had
I
a
guess
shotgun.
oh, yeah, yeah, that's, I felt
But
bad for
seriously,
that.
where'd the shotgun come from?
I don't know. And she's ready to kill Paul and kill herself. Like, she's ready to end right there, but Paul luckily is, like, saying what I was saying, like, his one leverage point is, "I gotta finish the book first. I'll finish it tonight." But I just think with the sheriff thing again, I just think that reminds me of the stepfather, but also it's just like I'm like, he would have definitely told his wife. Like, people should be, like, on the way very quickly to investigate. If in fact, he might have even told his wife, like, "Hey, if I don't come back, then something is off with Annie Wilkes. Send people." Because he's included his wife in the entire thing so far, so I feel like he's not just going over to her house without informing her. I don't know, but that's the
Nah,
only thing with that.
I feel
I
like
if
if
I
the
was
wife was
I would have
there,
I would have removed the wife character altogether. Then
I feel like if the wife was actually there with, so I feel like if he told the wife where he's going, she's coming with him. Then I feel like there would have been a full on fight going on because that wife seemed like she'd throw some hands. She went with them everywhere they went. I mean, she was there with the car.
Annie
They were there when they first
wait,
saw the car.
what throw hands? Annie has a gun. She's gonna shoot him and then shoot her. Like, what do you she has a gun. Where's this fisticuffs coming in?
No,
They both
that old woman is throwing hands. Okay.
all you're asking for is 2 dead bodies. I mean, she already gonna lose her husband. Why you gotta have her get shot too, right? I mean, hey, let
Hey,
her grieve without taking a bullet, so
exactly. She doesn't need to grieve. She'll be dead right along with them. They'll be holding hands as they die.
you are a sick human being. Okay, so let's just say that Paul Sheldon has this perfect plan at the end. Basically, he's been weightlifting with the typewriter. His arms are strong. He's going to use the manuscript as leverage. Like, hey, I'm going to burn this as a distraction and then slam her in the back of the head with his typewriter. Um,
He should have done it more than once.
I think he put all into that first blow, though.
Yeah, I mean,
And
he
also, by the
did,
way,
but then he jumped on top of her. I would have grabbed, I would have had the typewriter in my hand as I fell on top of her, so it would just smash her head in even more. Be like, die.
maybe, but remember she shoots him too.
Eh,
She shoots him in the shoulder. So once he shoots him in the shoulder, lifting typewriter might be off the table. Diving to the ground was the smartest thing possible because the whole thing is when she's standing on him over top of him, of course he's sitting down, she's standing up, she has a real physical advantage then. When she dives on the ground, now I just have to be like, okay, now it's just literally his upper body strength versus her upper body strength. Like she's done for. In a physical struggle on the ground, he has like a 90% advantage now. I've been very surprised she can do. In fact, it should have been over quicker. He should have just he's literally on top of her with probably a 60% strength advantage. Probably just could have took his hand and bashed her brains in with his hand, like Jason style, just squeeze her eyeballs out like Friday the 13th
no,
Part 3.
she
But
should
they
have
still had
just
to make her
fell
how?
by
At,
sitting.
at what point was she like in a position to sit on him though? Like,
She was on top of him for a little bit before he pushed her on over.
I don't think it would work. I think he would have just thrown her off, honestly. Uh,
If she sat just
she,
right, there was no getting off, and then he would have suffocated to death.
once they're on the ground, I said, "Dead woman crawling." It was over. Uh, but nice physical struggle. And he takes the L, of course, with one final death blow.
With the
Um,
typewriter.
that looked like it hurt.
It did.
Um, yeah, it's I think the movie is. I mean, Stephen King said he wrote the book more about. He wrote it because like symbolic of his like addiction. Like somehow Annie represented his addiction. But the way the movie's aged, I'd say it's more about like toxic fandom. Like, what does it mean to be a number one fan, and what relationships do people have with their fans, and what happens when it goes too far. Um, I don't know, but there are definitely some Annie Wilkes out there. I'm sure. Unfortunately, they're out there.
Nah, I say the whole thing with number one fans is it should have, you know, you should always tell your person you're the number one fan of, hi, I'm just a fan, and then leave it at that. Because most likely, if you're in their line getting a autograph, they know you're a fan of them. You don't need to sit there and just start taking sledgehammers to their feet.
Which now we can talk about the book a little bit. Of course, famously, that's not how that was in the book. Am I correct?
Nope. Yep. So we already talked about a couple of the differences. Another difference is actually that sledgehammer scene. In the book, it wasn't a sledgehammer, it was an axe. And it wasn't both feet, it was just one. But the Annie ends up cutting off one of Paul's feet so he couldn't continue to get away. or at least he would have to hobble away and not walk away.
For this movie, I agree with because the whole thing was they thought it'd be too gory. I agree that doesn't fit this movie. Like this movie doesn't feel like it would have like a gory scene in it. So
I mean, that's one of the other differences is in the book. Mostly, the book is 100% just Annie and Paul. It doesn't go outside the house. However, so the sheriff was not actually in the book. What actually ends up happening is, in order to look for Paul Sheldon, a police officer does come to her house,
mhm.
and I don't know the full details, but I did hear it gets graphic.
Hmm.
Apparently, what happens to the sheriff is actually heaven compared to what actually ends up happening in the book.
Holy cow. Okay. I think that the movie probably needed the sheriff character just to like because you
Have
only
more
have like
time.
well not only that, but for the audience it might get kind of dull if you're just showing one setting the entire movie, just really his bedroom that he's laying in, just to keep cutting back to the bedroom over and over again. It might have got kind of dull for the audience not to have some kind of break where you cut away to something else. Um, so I could see where it's needed. Also, I guess when Annie kills the sheriff, it reinforces that look, Annie's a real murderer. Like she's capable of anything, pretty much.
She killed babies. Of
Um,
course, she's a murderer.
but that, but then seeing it on screen, it's like wow. So it could have got kind of monotone if like you just kept cutting back to the bedroom over and over again. It almost feels like a play then, and you just have one setting. So,
Another difference is actually the meeting, mostly in when Paul starts suspecting Annie, because in the movie, Paul's like, okay, Annie's a little eccentric, but not a bad person because she's nursing me back to health. In the book, however, it Paul does know right away. I guess Annie does something in the book, but apparently in the book, it is right away, immediate. He does not trust her.
okay, I can see that. I mean, there's no way for Paul to confirm early on, like, hey, did she contact my agent? Did she try to contact the hospital? Everything he's going by is just what she tells him. So I think most human beings probably right away are like a little bit suspect. But he wants to give her the benefit of the doubt because his life's in her hands. But obviously,
All
yeah,
right.
that's my thought.
Did we discuss the whole misery thing while recording? I can't remember, but
Misery thing.
the books themselves. So the novels.
Oh,
So in the book, the novels are actually more explained. It's more about the books themselves, not just the character. Whereas the movie, they had to condense it down to be just the character of misery.
okay. It's starting to feel to me like basically it might be a good idea to watch the movie first. Make sure you enjoy the story, and then if you want to get more details, then pick up the book and read the book also, just to get the more background. Movies always have to take some things out of the book just because unless you're gonna do a TV show, you have to get the runtime down, so some things have to go. I wouldn't be that curious about I don't feel like I need to know Misery's journey per se. We want to know, like, what genre it is basically, but I don't need
So
to know, like, Misery's life story, so
I mean, I'm assuming they're romance thrillers because apparently they're talking about in this one, Misery was buried alive at the end of one of the books. Another, they want Annie wanted the two guys that was part of the triangle to duel for Annie. So I'm assuming. I mean, they say it takes place in like the 1800s. So
it's not if again, it can't be straight romance, there's 9 books. I mean, like, it's like how many romantic stories does Misery go through? And then also one of the books called Misery's Quest. Like that just doesn't sound like a romance. I don't know,
sounds like a
but
softcore porn to me.
that might be. But
But the other thing is the fire actually. So movie, he burns the last manuscript that has Misery's death. In the book, however, for some reason, again, it probably makes more sense in the book, but apparently he does not burn the manuscript. He burns just a stack of papers.
hmm,
Not sure what that's about. Maybe I need to read the book to actually understand why he only burnt why she only had him burn a stack of papers.
Doesn't really make sense. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, well,
And that's pretty much all the yeah, that's it.
well, listen, I'll say this. I watched the movie numerous times. For me, fantastic thriller. I like the directing. I like the story. Again, you have a powerhouse performance with Kathy Bates, but on this watch, I had to gain a lot of appreciation, respect for the late great James Caan's performance. As yes, mostly he's laying in bed, but those facial expressions are doing a lot of work here in this movie. So props to James Caan. And yeah, one of the better, I'd say one of the better Stephen King adaptations for sure. It's a 35-year anniversary, so if you haven't seen it, then folks definitely make a point to see it. So
Actually, there is one more slight difference with the book. So the ending, pretty much Annie's death. So in the movie, it ends inside the room. She cracks her head on there, and then when she tries to kill him again, he beats her with a pig statue.
ouch.
At least according to this thing. I must have looked away. I don't remember. I just remember her slamming her head into the typewriter and then be dead.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
must have looked away for that. I don't remember a pig statue.
I don't remember that either. So
But apparently in the book,
oh well, yeah, we might be wrong though, so it's fine.
but apparently in the book, she after she hits her head with the typewriter, instead of going after him again, she climbs out the window to the chainsaw to try and kill him with a chainsaw. Only problem is the injury from the typewriter actually kills her before she gets to the chainsaw.
Oh, okay. Well, sounds right for Annie Wilkes. She probably does have a chainsaw. So
She was going to go for that Terrifier 3 kill.
oh yeah, I gotcha. All right,
Oh,
you got any final thoughts before we wrap this one
uh,
up?
I mean, my final thoughts are pretty much exactly what you said. It's a nice horror thriller, you know, and Kathy Bates as Annie Wilkes is amazing, amazingly, disgustingly evil. I mean, she killed babies. You can't get any more evil than that.
She's so good. If they brought her back like in some kind of sequel where she kidnapped a new author, I would have been like, you could make a series out of this. You know what I'm saying? Annie returns.
But she
Yeah,
died.
but yeah, but think how ironic it'd be like Misery was buried alive. They brought her back. Annie dies, but they bring her back. Annie returns. I'm saying it would have been dumb. It would have been straight to it would have been a Tubi original, straight to Tubi. It would
I
have been
bet
Kathy Bates.
I bet I
It
know
would have been
who the author would be. J.K. Rowling.
no, this would have been straight to Tubi. It wouldn't have been J.K. Rowling. It would have been who knows? But it wouldn't have been Kathy Bates. It would have been uh Laura Quigley.
Actually, I'd
Yeah,
probably watch that, to be honest with you. It'd be
I
nice to see Laura Quigley as a freaking villain again. She does pretty.
I
She likes having fun with movies, so
I definitely watch it. Well, folks, again, if you haven't seen it, check out Misery for sure, and appreciate those maybe 11% based on our retention numbers. Typically, the 11% of you hopefully still watching. If you did enjoy this, please subscribe. And
and as
me and
always,
Edward.
if you wake up at midnight, go back to sleep so you don't look like me in the process.
Giving advice to yourself, huh? Yep.
Yeah, pretty much.